What if I told you there's a creature that can regrow its brain, lives forever as a teenager, and might hold the secret to human immortality? This isn't science fiction. This is the axolotl, and its story begins with an ancient god who tried to cheat the ultimate sacrifice. In Aztec mythology, when the gods needed to sacrifice themselves to make the sun move across the sky, one god refused to die. Xolotl, the god of lightning and the underworld, was terrified of being sacrificed. So he did what any desperate deity would do. He shapeshifted to hide from his fellow gods. First, he became a corn plant. They found him. Then he transformed into an agave cactus, still discovered. Finally, in absolute desperation, he dove into the sacred waters and became a strange, smiling water monster called an axolotl. When his brother Quetzalcoatl finally caught him, he was spared from sacrifice, but cursed to live forever in the darkness of the lake as this bizarre aquatic creature. The Aztecs believed this god's spirit still lived within every axolotl they encountered. Little did they know, this cursed creature would one day become the key to understanding how humans might cheat the ultimate sacrifice too. The sacrifice of our own mortality. But the axolotl's most mind-bending trait isn't its mythological connection. It's something that completely shattered everything scientists thought they knew about animal development. Picture this. You're a French zoologist in the 1860s, and you've just received some strange salamander-like creatures from Mexico. You're absolutely convinced they're just babies, larvae of some unknown adult species. You're waiting patiently for them to grow up and show you what they really are. Then, 6 months later, something happens that makes you question everything you thought you understood about biology. These baby salamanders start having babies of their own. Auguste Dumeril, the scientist who received the first axolotls in Europe, was completely stunned. In the animal kingdom, only sexually mature adults can reproduce. If these creatures were making babies, they had to be adults already. But they looked exactly like juvenile salamanders, complete with external gills, tail fins, and that perpetual smile that made them seem like nature's eternal children. Dumeril had discovered something that shouldn't exist according to everything science knew at the time. A species that had essentially decided to never grow up. The axolotl had cracked the code that Peter Pan could only dream of. They remain aquatic their entire lives, keeping their feathery external gills, their tadpole-like tail, and their juvenile features forever. While their salamander cousins eventually crawl onto land as adults, axolotls said no thanks to adulthood and chose to live as permanent teenagers in their underwater paradise. Scientists call this neoteny, the retention of juvenile characteristics into sexual maturity. But calling it that doesn't make it any less incredible. These creatures had essentially found a biological loophole that let them skip one of nature's most fundamental rules. You must grow up to reproduce. But here's where the axolotl's story takes an even more shocking turn. Dumeril thought he understood these creatures. They were perpetual juveniles. End of story. Then, in 1865, he walked into his laboratory and discovered something that would blow his mind all over again. Some of his axolotls had transformed overnight into completely different animals. They had lost their external gills, developed movable eyelids, and looked ready to crawl onto land like proper adult salamanders. It was as if someone had cast a magic spell on them. Dumeril spent the rest of his life trying to figure out what had triggered this impossible transformation, but he passed away before finding the answer. The mystery haunted scientists for decades. How could a creature that was supposedly locked into its juvenile form suddenly decide to become an adult? What was the secret trigger that could make an axolotl evolve before their very eyes? The answer, when it finally came in the early 1900s, was stranger than anyone could have imagined. Researchers had been studying thyroid glands and their role in animal development. They decided to test something that seemed almost too bizarre to work. They fed thyroid tissue from farm animals to their axolotls. The axolotls began to transform. Their external gills disappeared. Their skin changed texture. Their fins modified into legs suitable for walking on land, and their entire body structure shifted into that of a terrestrial salamander. The thyroid tissue acted like a biological moonstone, unlocking a hidden evolutionary form that had been waiting dormant inside them all along. This discovery didn't just solve the mystery of axolotl transformation. It launched a revolution in our understanding of hormones like thyroxine, which was first isolated and synthesized partly because of what scientists learned from these shape-shifting water monsters. The axolotl had just given humanity its first major clue about how hormones control our own development and metabolism. But their contributions to human knowledge were only getting started. What scientists discovered next about axolotls was so incredible that it seemed to violate the basic rules of vertebrate biology. While most animals can heal wounds and maybe regenerate some tissue, axolotls possess an ability that borders on the supernatural. They can regrow entire body parts with perfect precision. Lost a leg? No problem, it'll grow back exactly as it was. Damaged their tail? It returns flawlessly. Injured their spinal cord? They repair it like nothing happened. But the most mind-blowing regeneration ability they possess involves an organ that was thought to be completely irreparable in vertebrates. They can regrow parts of their brain. In humans and almost every other vertebrate, brain damage is permanent. Our neurons are formed during embryonic development, and that's it. We get one shot at a properly functioning brain. Any injury to brain tissue usually results in permanent disability or impairment. The idea that an animal could actually regrow damaged brain tissue was considered impossible. Then, scientists started studying axolotl brain injuries and discovered they were witnessing something that rewrote the textbook on neural regeneration. When an axolotl suffers brain damage, something extraordinary happens. The cells around the injury site do something that human cells have completely forgotten how to do. They dedifferentiate. This means specialized brain cells lose their specific identity and transform back into stem cells, just like they were during embryonic development. These newly created stem cells then begin rebuilding whatever was damaged: neurons, blood vessels, support tissue, until the brain is completely restored to its original state. It's as if the axolotl has a biological time machine that can reverse specialized cells back to their embryonic potential and rebuild from scratch. This process doesn't just work for brain tissue. It's how they regenerate everything from limbs to organs to spinal cord tissue. The axolotl essentially has a master reset button for any part of its body that gets damaged. But here's what makes this discovery truly revolutionary for human medicine. Axolotls don't have special regeneration genes that we lack. They're using the same basic genetic toolkit that exists in our own bodies. The difference is in how they regulate and activate these genes. This means the ability to regenerate complex tissues might not be something humans lost during evolution. It might be something we still possess, but have simply forgotten how to activate. The implications of this discovery have sent shockwaves through medical research, because it suggests we might be able to reawaken our own dormant regeneration abilities. Scientists have been frantically studying every aspect of axolotl regeneration, looking for the molecular switches that could potentially be flipped in human cells. What they've found is both thrilling and tantalizing. Many of the key proteins and cellular mechanisms involved in axolotl regeneration are identical to ones found in human bodies. Macrophages, immune cells that we readily have, play a crucial role in their regeneration process. When researchers eliminated macrophages from an axolotl before amputation, the limb formed scar tissue instead of regenerating, just like what happens in humans. They've also discovered that a protein called transforming growth factor beta, which is essential for preventing scar tissue in human embryos, is a key player in axolotl regeneration. Even more exciting, researchers found that both mice and humans can actually regenerate fingertips under certain conditions, using the same molecular pathways that salamanders use for full limb regeneration. The stem cells responsible for continuous fingernail growth appear to be remnants of more powerful regenerative abilities that our ancestors once possessed. Every piece of evidence points to the same incredible possibility. The genetic machinery for regeneration is still locked away inside our own DNA, waiting to be reactivated. The axolotl isn't showing us something impossible. It's showing us something we used to be able to do. If scientists can crack the code of how axolotls regulate these regenerative pathways, They might be able to develop treatments that could help humans regrow damaged organs, restore severed limbs, or even repair brain injuries that are currently considered permanent disabilities. The axolotl holds the potential to revolutionize medicine in ways that could make current treatments look primitive by comparison. But there's a devastating irony to this story that threatens to end it before we can unlock these life-saving secrets. While axolotls are thriving in research laboratories around the world, their wild populations are disappearing at a catastrophic rate. In 1998, scientists counted about 6,000 axolotls per square kilometer in their natural habitat. By 2015, that number had collapsed to just 35 individuals per square kilometer. That's a 99.4% population crash in less than 2 decades. Scientists predicted they would go completely extinct in the wild by 2020, and they've only barely managed to cling to existence since then. The cause of this ecological disaster is heartbreakingly straightforward. Lake Xochimilco, the axolotl's only natural habitat, has been systematically destroyed by human development. What was once a vast network of interconnected lakes covering much of modern-day Mexico City has been reduced to a series of polluted canals, representing just 2% of the original ecosystem. The ancient Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan was built on these lakes, with sophisticated canal systems that allowed axolotls and humans to coexist for centuries. Today, what remains of Lake Xochimilco is more like an open sewer than a natural lake. Agricultural runoff has created toxic algae blooms that poison the water. Invasive fish species introduced by humans now hunt axolotls relentlessly and compete for their food sources. The water quality has deteriorated so badly that it can barely support any aquatic life, let alone a species as sensitive as the axolotl. It's no wonder these creatures are nearly extinct in the wild. Their home has been transformed from a paradise into a toxic wasteland. The cruel irony is that axolotls have become one of the most successful research animals on the planet, with tens of thousands living in laboratories and aquariums worldwide. They're so common in captivity that they've been nicknamed the white mice of amphibians. Yet this laboratory success has created its own set of problems that threaten the species' long-term survival. Captive axolotl populations are becoming dangerously inbred due to their limited genetic diversity. The majority of laboratory axolotls descended from just a handful of individuals brought from Mexico decades ago, and generations of breeding within this tiny gene pool have weakened their genetic health. To combat this problem, scientists have crossbred captive axolotls with closely related tiger salamanders. But this solution has created its own complications. Many laboratory axolotls now carry foreign genes that make them genetically different from their wild ancestors. This means that the axolotl scientists are studying in labs may not be exactly the same as the ones facing extinction in the wild. The unique genetic adaptations that allowed wild axolotls to thrive in their specific lake environment for millions of years are being diluted or lost entirely in captivity. If wild axolotls go extinct, we'll lose not just a species, but potentially crucial genetic information that could be essential for understanding their regenerative ability. The obvious solution would be to reintroduce captive-bred axolotls back into Lake Xochimilco. But the current state of their habitat makes this impossible. Releasing healthy axolotls into the polluted remains of their ancestral home would be equivalent to a death sentence. Until the lake can be cleaned up and restored, something that seems unlikely given the political and economic realities of Mexico City, reintroduction efforts are doomed to fail. Some scientists have proposed a radical alternative, giving axolotls a completely new home. Researchers have identified potential sites, including a freshwater lake formed in an abandoned quarry near Mexico's National Autonomous University. This artificial habitat has been stocked with dozens of axolotls fitted with radio transmitters so scientists can track their survival and behavior. Early results are promising. The axolotls appear to be adapting to their new environment and have begun breeding successfully. While this isn't the same as preserving them in their original habitat, it might be the best hope for maintaining semi-wild populations that retain their natural genetic diversity. If these experimental populations succeed, they could serve as genetic reservoirs for future conservation efforts, or provide researchers with access to wild-type axolotls for continued regeneration research. It's not perfect, but it might be enough to prevent the complete extinction of this remarkable species. The race to save wild axolotls isn't just about conservation. It's about preserving one of biology's most important research subjects before we fully understand what makes them so special. Every wild axolotl that disappears takes with it millions of years of evolutionary adaptation and genetic information that we might never be able to recover. The regenerative abilities that could revolutionize human medicine are encoded in their DNA, shaped by countless generations of natural selection in their unique lake environment. Time is running out to decode the secrets of axolotl regeneration while we still have access to genetically pure wild populations. The proteins, cellular pathways, and genetic regulatory mechanisms that allow them to regrow brain tissue and regenerate limbs could hold the key to treating spinal cord injuries, organ failure, and countless other medical conditions that currently have no cure. But if we lose the wild populations before fully understanding how their regeneration works, we might be closing the door on medical breakthroughs that could benefit millions of people. The axolotl's story represents both humanity's greatest scientific opportunity and our most tragic conservation failure. Here's a creature that has already contributed enormously to medical research, from helping us understand thyroid hormones to revealing the molecular basis of regeneration. Their unique biology has the potential to unlock treatments for conditions ranging from paralysis to heart disease to brain injuries. Yet we're allowing them to slip toward extinction while we're still learning from them. The ancient Aztecs believed that axolotls carried the spirit of a god who had tried to escape sacrifice. Perhaps there's more truth to that myth than they realized. The axolotl may indeed carry something divine, the biological secrets that could help humanity escape our own mortality. Their regenerative abilities represent a form of immortality that we can only dream of, the ability to repair and restore our bodies indefinitely, growing back what we lose and healing what gets damaged. But like the god Xolotl hiding from sacrifice, the axolotl is now hiding from extinction in the murky, polluted waters of what remains of their sacred lake. The question is whether we'll recognize the treasure we're about to lose before it's too late. The creature that was once considered cursed to live forever in darkness might actually be the key to ensuring that humanity doesn't face the same fate. The axolotl's smile, which has charmed people for centuries, might be nature's way of laughing at the ultimate joke, that the secret to human regeneration was sitting in a lake in Mexico all along, waiting for us to be wise enough to learn from it before we destroyed its home forever.